Today, we're gonna build the cheapest little gaming PC that you could build. Oh, hi there, I'm TechDweeb. How you doing? This will be a fun video. I have a new processor. It's the Athlon 3000g. I wanted to test it on the channel. I gotta build it into a little bitty gaming PC. And I thought I would try to do this on the tightest budget possible. This is the absolute cheapest possible gaming PC that I could build using entirely new parts. I gotta keep a running total of the cost as I go. So, without further delay, let's dive in. As always, we're gonna start with the motherboard. This is the Asrock B450M Pro Series 4. This supports our Athlon 3000g processor. The cost for this after taking advantage of a mandated rebate was $45. It has all the features we need. Micro ATX form factor, not fancy, but it'll work fine for everything we want to do with the Athlon 3000g. We want to work on a non-static surface as we prepare our motherboard. The box that it comes in works just fine for that. Here's our Athlon 3000g processor. This is an APU, which means that it's going to function both as our CPU and our GPU. It's not a beast or anything, but it only cost me $55. So we can't expect the most amazing performance in the world, but I do at least expect we'll be able to play games, albeit at lower settings and resolutions. The 3000G even comes with a cooler. No need to spend extra on a cooler, which is nice. It had pre-applied thermal paste, but I already took it on and off a few times as I was doing some tests, so I need to reapply the paste using Noctua NT-H1 paste if you're curious. Gonna squeeze out a little blob about the size of a grain of rice or a medium-sized ant. And we'll install the stock cooler. This cooler isn't fancy, but it'll work fine. One bummer is that it has these ugly rainbow power cords, so I gotta spruce these up by wrapping them in electrical tape. Should look a little nicer than the default ketchup and mustard color. Don't get me wrong, I love ketchup and mustard on my veggie dogs, just not on my PC. I will just tuck this under the VRAM heatsink to keep it all tidy. Next up is our RAM. We're going with 16GB of XPG Gammix for $45. This is 3000 MHz RAM, but I'm hoping I can overclock it a bit. We might be able to go up to 3200 MHz, which would be nice, but we'll see. Next up, our system drive. Now this motherboard supports M.2 NVMe drives, and it has two M.2 slots as you can see, but this processor doesn't support NVMe. The 3000G can't support PCIe 16X on the M.2 slot, so we had to go with a SATA SSD. Still an M.2, so the build will be nice and clean and small. This is a Timetec 256GB SATA M.2 drive. This was $29 and it should work just fine. So there's our board done, ready to go here. Get that ready and then we'll be good to put the board in the case. Easy stuff. So we'll get the case ready. This is the Golden Field 21 Plus. It's a very small case, especially considering this isn't ITX, micro ATX. As you can see, it's got our 4 expansion slots for our micro ATX board over here. And it's a very weird case to build it, super weird. The power supply gets mounted up top here and gets routed along to the back. There's very little room for cable management. No room, really. I built in this case before, and I could say that it's a bit of a challenge if you've never built in it before. You'll see in a sec here. It looks great though. I really like the look of it. And it's only $44. Let's take off the tempered glass side panel and put it carefully out of the way over here. Uh-oh. Get these cables out of the way, our panel connectors, and it comes with a little box with the M3 screws to hold in our motherboard, and some extra cable ties, which we may or may not end up using. Always nice to get extra stuff like this. The case has USB 3 front panel connector, a USB 2 connector, front audio for the audio jack, and the power connector cables for the power button. All standard stuff. Before we do anything, let's put the I/O shield in for our motherboard on the back of the case. These things are obnoxious to install in this case. It just barely fits, which is to say that it doesn't really fit and you have to wrestle with it and sort of cram it in on both sides at once. This case is kind of wonky and the measurements are just a tiny bit off. It's really annoying and I kind of hate it, but it looks good and it's small and it's cheap, so I really wanted it for this budget build. Alright, got that in. Jeez Louise. Now let's put our motherboard in. Nice and slowly, carefully. Put it where it needs to go. Don't want to bend anything or bump it around and break something, which I definitely haven't done before. Nope, not me. I would never break something on the motherboard while putting it in the case. Oh no, never. Why would you even say that? So now we're going to do the power supply. And the power supply is exceptionally weird in this case. It has this bracket, as you can see, and the power supply gets mounted to the bracket, and then you have to plug in the top power cable that's built into the case to route the power from the back to the front. But before we plug in the power supply, we need to plug in the 24-pin connection to the motherboard because the power supply blocks access to that, and we won't be able to plug that in after we put in the power supply. Oh, what a weird case, am I right? I like the look and size, but you do have to make some sacrifices when you go with this case. Oh, by the way, the power supply we're using is an Evga 450 watt 80 plus bronze power supply. I bought it because it was the cheapest power supply that I could find that wasn't super ugly. It was only 27 bucks. It's not modular, which is a shame because this case has no cable management to speak of. Well, we'll just bundle these extra PCIe and SATA and Volex connectors up into a nice little package, and well, maybe we could tuck it behind the power supply or something. There we go, that doesn't look too bad. Now we need to take the power supply and mount it to the bracket, just like this. Oh, and the power switch on the power supply needs to be put in the on position. Don't forget that, or you'll have to take it out again. Okay, let's slowly and carefully put the power supply into the case and... Oh, wait a sec. Oh, this doesn't fit. The RAM is in the way. Did I totally mess this up? Oh my god, I feel like such a noob, you guys. Yeah, the last micro ATX motherboard I used in this case was a narrow one. This was the wider style, and the power supply doesn't fit. Oh, good grief. I'll give me a minute here while I take a break to question all the choices I've ever made in life. Okay, I'm okay. So yeah, it's not gonna fit like that because it squashes that side of the motherboard, but maybe, just maybe, we can make it fit. So I have these little strips of aluminum and here's my plan. I'm gonna use the same technique that I used in the video where I did a case swap for the Lenovo M93P into this case, and I can use this to help secure the power supply to the bracket using zip ties. We're gonna mount this in the other way, like horizontally across the front, which will give us space behind it. Yeah, it's not gonna look as cool with the power supply blocking the RAM and part of the motherboard. I think this is gonna work fine though, so let's give it a try. Let's plug everything else in and get it all ready. We have our 8-pin CPU connector up along the top. I'm going to tuck the cable in behind the motherboard and keep it a bit tidier and keep it in place. And now we'll squeeze in that power supply with this giant bundle of cables underneath. This won't be elegant, but we'll do what we can to tidy it up. And there we go, it fits. Not the worst thing in the world. Not the best, but we'll survive, somehow. If I can actually manage to keep this from looking like a total mess of wires, I'll be impressed. I think I'm gonna be able to tuck this bundle of wires behind the power supply. If I can manage that, it'll be pretty tidy looking, I guess. So now we're gonna plug in our front panel connectors. I can never remember the pinout for this. Oh, there it is. So we'll need to make sure that these match up with these. You can't see what I'm doing here because my arm is blocking it because I suck at being a YouTuber apparently. And after I manage to get the front panel connectors in, I'm gonna do the front USB and the front audio connectors. One thing I am gonna do is add an 80mm fan to the back of the case just to make sure we have some sort of airflow going on. I'm not expecting crazy temperatures from this 3000g APU, but you do need some airflow, especially if you're gonna be overclocking like I intend to. Oh, by the way, I did the same thing with this cable. I wrapped it in electrical tape to make it look all black and cool. Trust me, I know cool, guys. I know cool. Okay, and that's what we're left with. Not too bad. It gets the job done. Yeah, I don't like the mess of cables down here, but I might be able to clean it up a bit more. Overall, it's pretty good looking, all things considered. I think the power supply is going to be held in there nicely by my makeshift bracket mounting. It actually looks sorta cool facing the front like this. I like it. No airflow to speak of, but that shouldn't be a problem. It's fine. Everything's fine. So let's finish this up by putting our glass back on, and that oh so satisfying feeling of peeling off that plastic. Oh wait, it's got a big ugly sticker on it. Oh yay. Oh, that's just great. I'll take this to the bathroom sink and I'll show you how to deal with this. I get the water running very hot and then put the sticker under the hot water. Let it run over the sticker for a good minute or two and then you have a much easier time scraping it off. And once you get as much off as you can, you just go in with the scrubber and clean it up. Dry it off and you're good to go. And there it is. I know you can't see very well inside. No RGB or anything. I mean, it's not fancy. It's a computer, and it should play some games. It's the cheapest gaming PC that I could build with all new parts. The total cost is just $245. I think it looks really nice considering the budget. So the only thing left to do is give it a test and get it up and running with Windows. As if we post, so let's see how we did. Okay, moment of truth. Are we gonna post the first time? Only one way to find out. I really hope this works. I really don't want to mess around with troubleshooting this thing. Come on, baby. I'm feeling lucky. Yep. Yeah, super lucky. Come on. Oh man. This isn't good. Are we seriously gonna have to? Oh, I saw something. Are we gonna post? Alright, we have a post. Oh, there's my BIOS. Oh, that's a relief. Nice. Okay, we have our 3000g Athlon with Radeon Vega graphics right there. Our RAM speed's running at 2666, so I think we could tweak that. Yeah, over here we can enable XMP and set it to the proper speed of 3000 megahertz. I'll try overclocking it later. And for storage, yep, there's our SATA M.2 SSD. So the only thing left to do is install Windows, and then we'll see how she performs. Well, we're gonna call that a success. Not bad. Not bad at all. Alright, so we have Windows installed, no problems at all, and everything's working great. The performance, you can see right here, there's our Athlon 3000g with Radeon Vega graphics, and a base clock of 3.5 GHz, 2 cores with hyper-threading, so we have 4 logical processors. Our memory, 16 GB, running at 3000 MHz, so the XMP worked just fine. And our SSD right there, no problems at all. So the only thing left to do is install Steam and give it a test in some games. Like I said, I'm going to be doing some more videos on the gaming performance of the 3000G. We're going to overclock it and do some comparisons, see how it performs in a variety of games, and try to determine if this is actually a viable CPU-GPU combo that you can get to actually play games on. Considering the price of this setup, I think it'll probably be worth the cost of admission at least. We'll decide that later though. You've been patient enough to sit through the build, so I gotta show you some gameplay, don't I? I gotta plug this into my display capture and let's see how she does, shall we? Let's do some gaming tests here. You have to keep in mind that this CPU and GPU cost $55. So we're not gonna get crazy top of the line gaming performance. I just want to be able to play games, even if we have to lower the settings. I started off my tests with The Witcher 3. I went with the stock clocks at first here, running at 720p, low settings, and it wasn't performing very well. It was playable. I know lots of people play games with frame rates in the 20s and 30s like this, but I know this APU could give us more than this. So I decided to go for an overclock. Using Ryzen Master, I did some tests and managed to get up to 4.1 GHz on the CPU clock at 1.37 volts and 1.7 GHz on the GPU clock at 1.2 volts. This gave us a big jump in gaming performance. In The Witcher 3, we went from around 23 FPS right up to 41 FPS. That's huge. And playing The Witcher 3 at 720p low settings and getting over 30 FPS, this is what you can expect from this APU. This performance is on par or even better than a Nintendo Switch, for instance. Not mind-blowingly great graphics, but you can play games. And if you're not a graphics snob, then you'll have a great time. And this performance is just great, in my opinion, for the price. You can of course play older games just fine. Everything from the Xbox 360 era will run without problems. Lots of older games will even run at 1080p on medium settings, and very old games will run at over 60 FPS at max settings. And keep in mind that if you're mostly playing older or less demanding titles, you can make the entire cost of the build go down by only going with 8GB of RAM or 128GB SSD, a cheaper power supply, and reusing an old case from the dump after you clean out the sticky stuff in the fan grate and scrape off the raccoon poo. My point is that for $55, you can get a CPU and GPU combo that can play games, even modern games, and you can have a great time playing games like this. There are even more resolution scaling options that we can explore to get more out of this APU, but I guess save that for a future video. The point today was a proof of concept. Yes, you can build a gaming PC for less than $250, and yes, you can use it to play modern games. That's all we need to know. So should you buy an Athlon 3000G? Well, that depends. Are you a graphics snob and refuse to play on anything except over 1080p high settings at 100 plus FPS? Or are you a gamer, a true gamer, who needs to get gaming on a budget and is willing to sacrifice visual effects and resolution if it means you can get up and running and playing your games on a PC that you can buy and build yourself today with parts that are available that you can afford? If you're like me, you'll game on anything if you need to. I play The Witcher 3 on 720p low settings and have a great time. Sure, I'd rather play on my RTX 3080 and Ryzen 5800X, but if push came to shove, you know I'd be a-okay with putting in 200 hours, 100%ing Shadow of the Tomb Raider at 720p if the alternative is not playing games at all.
You're the Duke of this, the Duke of that, you're the Duke of Dog Tittle.
And that brings us to the end. Please let me know in the comments below what do you think of my super cheap budget gaming PC build. Pretty darn cheap. And the 3000G in my first test showed some promising results. Stay tuned for more videos on the 3000G to see how it holds up to modern games. So let me know what you think of this setup in the comments below. And while you're down there, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, or a thumbs down if you hate it. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.